Hello, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Sheridan. Name of the show is Up All Night with Jeffrey Sheridan. Um, I usually stay up most of the night, so I thought, um, what can you do besides, watch TV all night and stuff? And I watch a lot of podcasts and stuff during the day, so that takes up quite a bit of time. And I thought, I'm up most of the night, and there's a lot of people that can't get to sleep at night, or they stay up all night, or they work, a different shift or whatever. And so I thought, hey, let's uh, let's go live, and what the hell? Um, I don't have the capability right at the moment to take like phone calls or anything, and probably maybe text messages might be the first step because I'm not really up on the technological stuff. I don't have a producer. I don't have a director. I don't have a this. I don't have a that. I don't got my public affairs person. It's just me and my dogs that you might see sort of running around here from time to time. So I thought, hey, let's just get on here, just chit chat, whatever. Maybe we can all keep each other company or whatever, and just sort of just take it one step at a time. Um, you know, Pretty much whatever you might want to talk about. Um, I'm not really limited on topics. Um, I don't know if I really want to get into too much um, politics because I do have some very definite views on politics, and that would probably, might sort of tick a fair amount of people off, and it's like, I don't want to listen to that stuff. But I will get into it and stuff, and then, if you don't like what I say or whatever, then what the hell, you know? I guess you'll just tune me off. But anyway, I just wanted to get on here for a second, and because this is the first time that I've been on, so I just wanted to see, how everything was going. Um, I have to admit, um, the first thing that sort of got me going, to come on the air tonight for the first time. I've sort of been, um, off and on. I've sort of put things online. I do have like four other things that uh, I've already posted. Um, it's where I do a character called Freddie Fartelheimer, and he's your hardcore MAGA person that loves Trump and whatever he does and everything. I even got a little "Make America Great Again" cap when I do my Freddie Fartelheimer thing. Um, so I don't know. Maybe I might get into that. Like I said, I've already posted maybe like four different things um, in the character of Freddie Fartelheimer. um, but anyway, it's just me, just little old me myself, right tonight. I guess the main thing that got me going on to go online tonight is um, I saw a headline where Mike Lindell, Mr. Pillowman, that I guess he got in his mind that he's going to run for governor of the Republican as a Republican in Minnesota. Mike Lindell, uh, and it had to sink in for a minute. Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, the The raving lunatic. Anytime he opens his mouth, it's it's totally fantasy, or lies. No, I'm not. He might give Donald Trump a run for his money as far as fantasy and not telling the truth. Um, but anyway, I saw where Mike Lindell was going to be running for governor of Minnesota on the Republican side, and according to the polls, he's got a big lead. He's got a big lead on the Republican side to be the governor of Minnesota. And I just sort of, it struck me as like, you really have got to be kidding me. Uh, the guy is a raving lunatic, and you guys would consider him to be your governor? I thought, oh my God. Um, I don't know who's, him and Stephen Miller are total psychopaths. Um, so anyway, that sort of got me going. I was like, Mike Lindell running for governor of Minnesota, and he's in the lead on the Republican side. So I just had to get online and make make an announcement. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. And then of course I saw old Mr. Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of, is what they like to call it, the Secretary of War. That's the more macho term to use, and instead of Secretary of Defense like it used to be. No, they had to change that to Secretary of War. And he was up there testifying today, begging them for more money, more money, more money for this stupid ass war, or as Trump likes to call it, our skirmish or a little picnic, you know, in Iran, because he doesn't want to refer to it as a war, because technically then, it would be a war. Then he'd have to get approval from Congress and all that. So he never calls it a war. He just calls it a little escapade or a skirmish, um, so he can get around the rules and not call it a war. And that's one thing. That's one thing about this administration. I'll tell you, they will um, try and get around anything where any sense of responsibility or asking for permission to do something. No, they don't want to mess with that. They just want to be able to do whatever the hell they want to do. Okay. I mean, I knew, I swear, before they moved into, or they started um, bombing Iran, at before they even started, they were talking about it and stuff. And I said, "Oh my! I hope they don't. I hope they don't do that. Go in there and start that. You know, Iran is a whole different country. It's a big, big country. All right. And another thing, we we should get out as soon as possible. Okay, because Russia and China are going to make sure that they supply Iran with enough, excuse me, with enough missiles and things like that, to keep things going, because they know that we're, oh man, uh, anyway, because they know that we're bogged down in there, and Russia and China, they want us to stay in there because they know it's going to drain us, keep draining us and making us weaker and weaker. So Russia and China are going to supply Iran with the things that they need to keep things going. So it doesn't matter how many nights we bomb or any of that, because it's never going to be enough. Russia and China are always going to make sure that they're resupplied with whatever they need. All right? So we might as well get the hell out now. It'll be the same thing that was in Vietnam, okay? Yeah, we had the most power and blah, 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 blah. But the reason why it lasted so long is because China kept supplying North Vietnam with supplies and men and everything. That's what kept it going. And that's why we were in Vietnam for so long. And the same thing's going to happen in Iran. I mean, anybody can see that. And I blame Trump for putting yes men, ass kissers in all these positions that aren't man enough, even though Hegseth is always talking about testosterone and he's going to test everybody for testosterone and shit. I mean, what kind of stupid talk is that from your Secretary of War? Okay, I'll call it Secretary of War if that's what they want to call it. All right, talking about testosterone. He's going to test everybody for testosterone. And I guess anybody that's low on testosterone, I guess they're going to fire or whatever, I guess. And I mean, if you look at this logically, about the last people I want to have an overdose of testosterone is the military, the ones that control the bombs, and can kill people and stuff. All right. And the head of the military, the Secretary of Defense, who makes decisions on who lives and dies, or if we're going to do this or do that, or bomb this or bomb that. The last thing I want is a person hopped up on testosterone. I want somebody that's going to be thinking clearly, not thinking through a haze of testosterone. I don't want them thinking out of the wrong head, if you know what I mean. I want them to think out of this head, not the one down there, because they're full of testosterone flowing through their bloodstream and shit. I mean, I never heard of anything so ridiculous. I mean, these people that he has in charge of all these different departments and stuff are the most inept, unqualified clowns that there's ever been. I mean, there's never been a cabinet like this where the people that are in charge of everything are incompetent. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And all these people that are up, all these judges and Todd Blanche and stuff like that go up and testify, and they're afraid. They're afraid when they're asked the question of who won the 2020 election. They're afraid to say that it was Joe Biden because it might make Donald Trump mad, and then he'll pull their nomination if they say the wrong thing. I never seen such weak ass people. I've never seen it before. They're afraid to say something because Donald Trump might get mad at them. As far as I'm concerned, I would say, screw you, Donald. I'm going to tell the truth. If you don't like it, well then fuck off. Then, all right. Then this job ain't for me if I can't tell the truth. Yeah, Joe Biden won the 2020 election. All right. Instead, they got him saying this technical stuff where they're not really admitting that he won. Well, they say that, well, he was certified. that he won, which means that he still might have lost, but he was still certified. Just a bunch of weak ass people. Whew, I'm telling you, you know. And then with Hexeth going in there today, asking for more and more, more and more and more money, and just thinking about all that money if they spent here in this country, what it could have done. You know, with what they're asking for, they could send everybody to college for a year free. You know, they could provide health care for people. People that can't afford it anymore would be able to have health care and stuff. But no, they're throwing it away in Iran, throwing it away. And it's so obvious they got to pull out now. They're not never going to win because China and Russia are going to make sure that we stay there as long as possible because they know it makes us weaker and weaker and weaker. Look at the oil reserves in this country. Our oil reserves are gone. So if there is sort of some conflict with China or Russia, we don't have a stockpile of oil anymore. We're going to be scrambling around to find enough energy and oil, you know, to run the planes and the tanks and the ships and shit. Yeah, the country's out of here. I know Trump likes to. Oh, we got more oil in this country than anybody. Yeah. Well, our oil reserves, there's just enough oil in there right now to keep the pumps running because you got to maintain a certain level to keep the pumps running properly. And if it goes below that level, the whole system falls apart and then the pumps stop and stuff. So you have to keep a certain amount of oil in there to keep the system running and everything. That's where we're at right now. There is nothing more that we can take off of there. And the reason why it's so freaking low is because Trump has taken the oil reserves out of there to try and keep the prices of gas down as low as possible so people don't get even more pissed off at paying higher gas prices and stuff. So he's artificially been taking all of our oil reserves to keep the price of oil down and keep the price of gas down. But we don't have any more oil reserves. He can't do it anymore. And now we don't have a strategic stockpile of oil anymore. And for what? For what reason? We didn't have to. We didn't even have to. We didn't have to go in there. It's not like Iran invaded some country or they threatened us in some way or whatever that we had to go in there and start something. No, it's this vague thing. Well, we can't let them have a nuclear bomb. Blah, 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 blah. But you watch and see after all this is over and stuff, whenever it gets over, whatever nuclear program they had is not gonna be affected in any way because now they've seen you've given them the golden goose. You've given them first hand knowledge that how much power they have. By simply closing the Straits of Hormuz, they can control the world's economy. And all it takes is a few missiles or a few drones or a few speedboats, to blow up a couple oil tankers and stuff so that the companies that own the oil tankers and stuff, they go, well, no, we can't take a chance. If one of our ships get blown up, especially if it's full of oil and shit, we're going to lose a ton of money and shit. So it's like we're not going to be taking the chance. So that's all it takes is just the threat that something might happen. And there's no way we're going to be able to stop Iran from having a few missiles or a few drones or a few speedboats somewhere, we're not going to be able to obliterate. I don't know, that's their favorite word that they've been using the past year is, oh, we obliterated this and we obliterated that. You know, that's one thing. Another thing that drives me crazy about about this regime, this administration, is all these bombastic words and like the big beautiful bill. I mean, how corny and stupid is that? Calling a piece of legislation, oh, the big beautiful bill. Ugh. Ugh. The big beautiful bill. Yeah. That they think if they word a piece of shit a certain way that people are going to accept it, and if you word it just nice and pretty enough, people will accept it. Because let's admit it, a lot of the American people, and I'll tell you what, I blame Trump, man, Stephen Miller, Mike Johnson, but the American people that fall for their bullshit and fall for their lies, that's the real problem right there. And I blame Fox News, that they're nothing but a propaganda network. They don't, whatever Trump and his administration are trying to do, Fox is all for it. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and the first time they can take a derogatory comment about a Democrat or some Democratic policy or something. Oh, they jump right at that. Oh, the Democrats, they got Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, the only person I think that has some a derangement syndrome is Donald Trump. He seems to be fixated with um, Barack Hussein Obama constantly. And this crap about blaming Joe Biden for everything. Well, we had to start from the. Well, we had to. We were. Nothing but a lie. Nothing but a lie. You got to remember when Biden was president, he took over basically an economy that was being ravaged by COVID. Places shutting down, restaurants shutting down, and stuff, because they had an unknown disease that were killing hundreds and then thousands of people a day. So we didn't know how to handle it, what to do. So a lot of places had to close down and stuff. All right. So when that happens, like energy prices and things like that, um, they went down, the supply went down and stuff because nobody was taking trips anymore. They were staying in their house because of COVID and stuff. So I remember when Biden was president, people were thinking about, well, what are we going to do with the recovery? Now that things are starting to pick up. It's going to be so hard to steer this economy from not having a depression or at the very least a recession. And I remember those times when things started, when inflation was up around 9% and unemployment was high and stuff because of COVID, not of anything that Joe Biden did. All right. Not anything that Anthony Fauci did. They did what they thought needed to be done at the time until they found out more information about things. But sometimes they had to make decisions with the information that they had at the time. And then later on, it's like, well, maybe they didn't have to do that. Maybe they didn't have to close down this or that or whatever, you know, But hindsight is always perfect. All right. They did what they had to do, what they thought was the best thing to do at the time. But I remember, well, we're going to have a depression, a recession. How are we going to come out of this and stuff? All I remember is that when Biden was president, everything started to come down. Inflation came down, unemployment just gradually. Just a nice, smooth. I remember people were talking about a nice, smooth landing that was going on. Inflation was around 9 when it started, and then unemployment was higher. But I remember as the months went by, things kept getting lower and lower and lower and lower. By the time at the end of Biden's administration, inflation rate was 3%. But under Trump, right at the moment, the inflation rate is over 4%. You know, but but Trump and his minions, that's the first thing they, well, under Joe Biden, if we didn't, because of Joe Biden, that's just weak shit, and it's not classy either. All right, uh, presidents in the past, you know, didn't rag on the president before and stuff and blame them for this and blame them for that. You know, they showed some respect for the office and for the person that held it beforehand. They didn't denigrate him, like Trump does with Biden and Obama. You know, and it really pisses me off. Anytime he talks about Obama, oh, Barack Hussein Obama, he's always got to add that Hussein part, that middle name in there, that he's this Arab, this terrorist Arab. So he's always got to add Barack Hussein Obama. That pisses me off right there, you know, yeah, because whew, I didn't know if I was going to talk about politics or not, but obviously that's not happening. I've never seen a more disgusting person, no class person than Donald Trump. I mean, I'm just not talking about as a president, if he's good or bad. And I think he's going to go down as maybe the worst president we've ever had. But I'm just talking about just as a man, like a normal human being, even if he wasn't president. Like the guy has no morals. He's a psychopathic liar. He just lies and lies. And that's another thing too. That's really pissing me off about this war in Iran and stuff. The military, the CENTCOM or whatever it is, and Hexith and stuff, they're trying to keep everything under wraps. They don't want you to know how many people have been wounded, how many people have been killed. They've been trying to keep that under wraps as best they can, because if you notice that in this war, there aren't any reporters reporting on it. Did you see any reporters in Iran or wherever reporting on the war or anything? No, because our government doesn't want a reporter or reporters reporting on the war. They want to be able to control the narrative and what's going on to the American people themselves. And if they have to lie to make it look good, they'll do it. It's just like the same in Vietnam, where they were fudging the statistics and the number of deaths and crap like that, where they lied to the American people. They're doing the same thing right now. And for some reason, a lot of people and I don't expect other Republicans anymore to really have any sort of backbone and voice any sort of objection or displeasure about anything that Trump does, because they're just weak. They have no morals. They just care about their position of power, and that's all they care about. So if they have to go along with Trump and his administration, as far as hiding the truth, as far as how many people have died or wounded or blah 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 blah, they'll just go along with it because they get to keep their job and they get to stay in power. It's all they care about. It used to not be like that. There used to be, Republicans. I remember, like, during Watergate, there were some Republicans that I had a lot of respect for. I remember in particular Howard Baker from Tennessee. I thought he was like, I thought he was like one of the coolest people I've ever seen. You know, during the Watergate um, hearings, I mean, I just loved listening to Howard Baker, Republican from Tennessee. I thought he was just great. You know, but we don't have anybody like that anymore. You know, and nobody in the in the Senate, and then if somebody does speak out, then Trump comes out and attacks them, and they basically end up losing their job or retiring like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you know, it's like, oh hey, you were a totally different person when you were a congressman. Um, I remember Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was the loudmouth. That would like interrupt the president's speeches, Biden's speeches. How many times did she do that? You know, and then when she couldn't take Trump anymore, and Trump got rid of her and stuff like that. Then she had the big change of tune and stuff. You know, which I do have some respect for her. Doing that, finally sort of seeing the light. That you're supporting the Donald Trump is a psychopath. Okay, he has no emotions, no feelings. I've felt this way for a long, long time. He has no feelings. He's a psychopath. It's like uh, he's a pathological liar. I mean, he lies. Even I saw where these troops came home, the ones that they got killed before they got killed. And he went. Probably his advisor said, well, you got to go and you know, uh, you know, see the troops home because that's what the president's supposed to do. So, he went to do that, but afterwards, then reporters started asking him questions and stuff. He made some sort of comment about, you know, yeah, they, the people that died, the four people, yeah, well, they knew that what they were going for was for a good thing, to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. You know, like he had personally talked to every one of them, and they had expressed that opinion to him that that's the reason why that they were going to Iran or wherever, or why they were in the military or whatever, was to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. He did, he just comes right out and says shit like that. It's a freaking lie. He hadn't talked to everyone, each one individually, or talked to any of them. Period. For them to tell him, you know, well, I'm proud, so that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. He just spouts out these lies, and it just rolls over people like, oh, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. Like with that stupid ass reflecting pool that we've been talking about for how long now? 3 months going on or whatever. That he let somebody do the pool with a no bid situation, I guess, because they done some work for him down in Mar-a-Lago or whatever, and I guess he liked their work or whatever, Uh, it's probably more like the person that owns the company or something probably gave him a big campaign contribution. So that's like, oh well, you help me, well I'll help you. You go ahead. We'll give you $16 million or whatever it was to redo the reflective pool or whatever. So they do a shitty job on it. So, but instead of Trump admitting that the people did a shitty job, and then maybe he should have, had taken bids that maybe a more qualified place might have done it, or whatever. When all the freaking paint comes up and all that stuff, he can't admit that. Well, maybe he did something wrong in choosing these people. No, no, no. He blames it on vandals that cut a 300 foot or whatever it was with a knife all the way down. That's what caused it to come up. It was vandals. It wasn't anything that I did and got in, and I let these people do it. You know, they did a good job. It was vandals. It was you. It was Antifa. Now, I mean, I mean, do we really even have to comment on that? How much of a freaking lie that is? They have no proof that anybody had a knife or utility knife and cut a big 300-yard uh, tear. So they're trying to tell me. So some person started at one end of the reflecting pool. I don't know how many feet of water are in the reflecting pool. I don't know, 2 3 feet of water or whatever. So some guy got in the middle of the freaking reflecting pool in 2 or 3 feet of water, and I guess reached down in the water or something or whatever with a knife or something, and just cut and went for 300 yards in a couple of feet of water, putting a tear in the lining and stuff like that with nobody seeing anything. Or yeah, I mean, it's so ridiculous that it doesn't even make any sense that something like that would even be possible. But no, it was vandals. Oh, it was left wing people. They just trying to make me look bad. Everything is about him. Oh, they're trying to make me look bad. You know, oh, I'm the hottest. I mean, what is it with him and this? I'm the hottest president, or we're the hottest country. What is this? How does a president doesn't talk in words like that? Like, oh, I'm the hottest guy. I'm the hottest president there's ever been. I guess some people find it folksy and amusing. I guess. Yeah. I just find it is bumbling and low class and dragging down the office of the president and just using words. Somebody might use at the bar on the corner or something like that. I don't really find that something to be proud of at all. And I don't. What is this shit with Trump talking about? Oh, we were dead when I took over. We were dead. The whole country was a living hell. It was dead. And now people are respecting us. People used to laugh at us, but now people respect us. Psychopath, delusional. I think he actually believes that. He doesn't realize that people are laughing at us and him more than they ever had right now. How incompetent and inept he is and his administration. They're laughing at him talking about invading Canada and making them the 51st state. Well, what kind of stupid ass talk is that? We're gonna take over Greenland. Greenland. We're gonna take it over, and you know, why should it belong to Denmark? They just stuck a couple ships stopped by, 500 years or so ago, and I guess and they called it property of Denmark. So yeah, well, we're just gonna take it over. What kind of stupidity have the American people, or so many of them, bought in to this guy? Now I know his popularity is like really down. Maybe like 30%. I think still think he's the greatest thing around, or think he's doing a great job. So I pretty much consider that at least 30% of this country there is no hope for. Because if you think that he's doing a good job, a great job, you'd probably vote for him again and stuff. If there's 30% of people that think like that now, after all this crap that we've gone through, well, we still got 2 more years to go of this shit. There's 30% of this country that there's no hope for. They're gone. You're never gonna get them back, because if they're that mentally damaged and that brainwashed, 30% of this country is, you just got to write them off. There's no hope for them. I guess that's what Hillary Clinton, was basically calling the deplorables, when she was running, and everybody got in a big tizzy about that. Oh, how can you call people deplorables and stuff? Boy, it was like, the worst thing that you could do and stuff. Oh, she was right, you know. But I think it's more like 30%. All right. But anyway, well, I said I wasn't going to talk about politics necessarily, but I guess that's about all I've been talking about. Yeah. Oh, and with all these Canadian wildfires and stuff, of course that was a big opening for Trump to, come on, what's wrong with Canada? I'm going to put another tariff on them for giving us bad air and stuff like that. Like like uh, like the Canadian Prime Minister can control the wildfires in Saskatchewan and Manitoba and shit like that. Most of that area is woods, forest and stuff. You know, maybe if they thought about it, maybe even more. And if it starts happening more, all these wildfires and stuff, well, maybe the climate change thing, that things are warming up, you know, that the climate change thing might actually be true, and maybe we could start doing maybe something about that. That maybe might help, the fire situation in Canada, possibly. That might be something we might want to try and do. But no, there's no climate change. It's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, these people are such Debbie Downers and so negative people. Anything scientific, it's all woke. It's all, oh my God. Wow. I heard this word woke so much over the past 5 to 6 years. This woke shit. I don't even know. I have no idea even what the fuck it means. They just sort of got onto this woke thing. This woke. So everybody had to use the word woke. As far as I was concerned, woke, it mean to me that sort of that you were awake. You were aware of things that were going on in the world. That you were aware of climate change. That you were aware, maybe, if you can use the sun and the wind power, to help you as far as energy and stuff, you wouldn't have to use as much oil and pollute the air more and stuff. But all we get from Trump and his minions and ding dongs is all these windmills and stuff. Uh, they kill too many birds and just a bunch of bullshit. To try and stop the wind power and stuff and solar. I mean, you know, if we just would have kept going on the path we were, you know, things would be so much better today. But no, we had to elect this dingbat again, and we've gone backwards so much. I don't, the thing that upsets me too, and about this country is once we finally get rid of Trump and all his negativity, you know, uh, and hate and negativity. So and then so we start forward again. We start forward again, but then the next election or the election after that, or maybe the election after that, and 4, 8, 12 years or whatever, you got some dumbass idiot again running that's going to just take us right back again, talking about the good old days. When you used a lot of gas in your car, you can rev the engine up, and you didn't need all this wind and sun power and stuff. Let's get back to using that good old coal, and let's dig some more mountains up and put some more smoke in the sky like it used to be in the good old days. It's like, you know, let's make America great again. All right, let's make America great again. All right, those were the good old days right there. I'm telling you right now. When we used to have separate water fountains for black and white people. We used to have separate theaters and you know separate restaurants and stuff like that. Now those were the good old days right there. And especially now if we go back even farther, well, what was really the best days of all was before women had the chance to vote. Now that's when the country was really great back then. So I think maybe we should just try and get back to that. The country was so much better off when women didn't get the vote and stuff like that. And then black people, they didn't get the vote neither. And things were just fine and dandy right back then. Ugh. Anyway, that's my Freddie Fartelheimer character that I do. I got a couple of them already posted that I did a few months or so ago. Well, more like 6, 7 months ago. I was playing around with some different things I might want to do. So I came up with my Freddie Fartelheimer character. So I got a couple already posted on there that are like 15 minutes long or whatever. So yeah. So anyway, so I ended up talking about politics, didn't I? Oh, what is there else to talk about right now? Oh, you know, I like to maybe if I get an idea. Um, I do know that all these weight loss drugs and stuff, they I hope they've tested these things out, really good. Because I got to lose some weight myself. Maybe that's one thing we can all have in common, if everybody joins me every night. Because I need to really lose some weight. I know whew, I probably got to lose at least about 150 pounds. All right. And so it's going to be tough. I could get the weight loss, drugs, but I'm sort of on a fixed income and stuff, even though, um, and if I get on the weight loss, you're looking at, for the pill, it's like $150. And for the, injections, you're looking at least what, like, 200 to 300 a month. And I just, I can't really afford that. That's just, and I'm sure most other Americans can't afford that either. Um, but I do have um, some some advice, or maybe something that a lot of you haven't heard, that if you are overweight and you might want to try the weight loss drugs. They have um, a government program. It's a bridge program where, um, if you're um, I forget what the criteria is. If you're on Medicare or something like that, but it's worth looking into, where you can get the weight loss drugs, the Zepbound, or the Wegovy. They've got a program now where you can get it for $50 a month. So you might want to look into that. Ask your doctor about the bridge program for the weight loss drugs. And if you're not aware of that, you can get those for as little as $50 a month. I tried to get it. It's sort of a long story, but I was already approved for like the Zepbound, like 3 months before they started this program, and they approved me. But I couldn't afford. I didn't know how much the stuff was at the time, or how much my insurance would pay for it. So when I find out, I'd still have to pay, I don't know, 200 and something dollars. It's like, oh, I can't afford that. That was like three months before they started the bridge program. That I can't really afford it. So I just let it go and stuff. Then when I found out about the bridge program, and then the bridge program started July 1st of this year, I said, oh, okay, well, I can afford $50 a month and stuff. So let me, let me go for that. Well, I couldn't get on the program for $50 a month because, I guess, of a technicality. I was already approved for the drug 3 months before that. So I guess once I was approved or something, then I wasn't eligible for the $50 a month program. I don't know. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but anyway, that's the reason why I couldn't get on the $50 bridge program, because I had already been approved like 3 months before that. And once you're approved for it, then you can't get on the $50 program. So anybody that's out there that might be interested in the weight loss drugs, you can get on it for $50 a month. Now, just ask your doctor or your pharmacy about the bridge program for the weight loss drugs at $50 a month. And so, I mean, I could afford that. I would have been able to swing that, but I wasn't eligible because I had already been approved for it 3 months before the program started. So I was a little bit pissed off about that. I couldn't quite understand, just because I was approved 3 months before the program started, why I couldn't get on the program, now that the program has started. But how rules and regulations and all that crap goes, so it wasn't eligible. So that's just a word out there for anybody else that might want to try, and get on it for $50 a month. I do know one thing though, that with all the problems with the lettuce and stuff, I have not been eating any salads, recently. I sort of, um, yeah, the problem with me and salads is I have a tendency to get sort of bored with salads after a couple days. So I always have to spice it up. It's sort of like when I used to drink the Slim Fast, shakes and stuff like that. Um, I used to pour the Slim Fast like in a glass, and then but after a while, I sort of got bored with it, so I started to add a couple scoops of ice cream. I, I started adding a couple scoops of ice cream to my Slim Fast, and boy, it sure tasted good. But it sort of defeated the purpose of the Slim Fast, and sort of expensive, you know. So I stopped drinking the Slim Fast. Um, and it's sort of the same thing with salads. I love Thousand Island dressing, and I don't really like the light, where it's like half the calories. I mean, I like the full taste of a Thousand Island dressing. And then, so basically, what would happen is, I'd pour half a bottle of Thousand Island dressing on my salad, and then I'd get the little oh, ham cubes, the chopped up ham and stuff like that, and put a pack of that on the salad, and then I'd get and then I'd get some shredded cheese and put that on the salad too, and maybe some bacon crumbs, and then of course I got to have some onions. Of course, the onions don't have any calories, but once you add up the Thousand Island dressing and the ham cubes and the bacon bits and the cheese, it's not really a diet food anymore. So um, my my thing with salads usually don't work out either. So although I was doing pretty good on it, recently, but then they came up, with this cyclosporine or whatever it is, in your fruits and lettuces and stuff. So I stopped eating it at least till they get that shit straightened out. Um, which is another thing too that when Doge made all their cuts and everything with government programs and stuff, they just cut this and that and this and that. They didn't really give a shit what it was or what it did. You know, uh, they cut the aid, going overseas to, the poor starving people and that's sort of dependent on it and everything. And so, thousands of people have died over there in Africa and stuff that used to depend on our aid and stuff. We just basically said, oh, we're not wasting our money, anymore. Uh, we don't really care if it was saving lives or not. It's not our responsibility, you know. So we're just gonna cut that off. So all good luck. So thousands of people died and stuff. And from what I hear, I guess somebody brought that up to Elon Musk. I heard maybe last month, and he sort of acted like he didn't even know what they were talking about, and you know, like he refused to accept what they were saying, that his cuts, directly caused the deaths of thousands of people. It's like he couldn't wrap that around his head and accept that. So he had to say no, that that's not true. So so anyway, the same thing sort of happened, with the cyclosporasis thing on the fruits and the vegetables and stuff. We you know we had some tracking program or something that would keep track of different things like that. That's one of the things that they cut, when they're Doge cuts and stuff like that. Uh, and they just, the whole attitude of cutting this and cutting that, and it doesn't really matter, you know, what it was, and doesn't matter if it was, for science or studies or tests or whatever it might be. Just cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that. You know, I have a little more faith in government, I guess, than maybe what those people or what a lot of people do. I think a lot of the a lot of positions that they cut with Doge and stuff. A lot of those positions were there for a reason. They were there doing a specific thing for a certain reason. I don't think they were just there just sucking up a paycheck and not doing anything and putting their feet on the desk and saying, "Oh, these suckers, well, they're paying me. I ain't doing anything." You know, I think most of the people that were getting their paycheck and that Doge cut were actually doing good things, whatever it might have been. You know, so we're gonna suffer the consequences, whatever it might be. If it's the screw worm or the cyclosporasis or you know whatever it is, or maybe more outbreaks of E. coli because they don't have as many food inspectors anymore. So something might get through that would normally have been you know picked up on. I mean, it's easy to cut things. It's easy to cut things, and you know, Elon, yeah, probably that image of Elon Musk on stage with his stupid ass chainsaw, acting like a raving lunatic. You know, um, something tells me that's probably going to be etched into my mind probably the rest of my life. You know, I mean, I've never seen such clowns. I mean, look at this Howard Lutnick. Every time you see him, around the president, he's always laughing or got this big shitty ass smile on his face. The one that said he didn't have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein, you know, but then come to find out when some documents came out and stuff and everything that, well, he was lying. He actually went to Epstein Island with his family. I don't know why you would bring your family you know, and your kids to an island that's run by a pedophile. I don't think your judgment's too good there. But all these clowns, they're in there, they're making millions of dollars while they're in there. Trump is just a money making machine. He's just hauling in the money and shit. He's always got he's always got the excuse, and the Republicans always back him up. It's like, well, he's a businessman. He's got a business and stuff. You can't expect his business, not to make money and stuff. You know, so his sons, run the Trump organization or the currency or the cryptocurrency thing and all that shit. You know, yeah, Donald Trump ain't got nothing to do with it. It's my sons. You know, they don't have any inside information, or I don't tell my sons anything that they might be able to, make some money on or something. You know, I know that's all a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, um, I just sort of wanted to get on here just for the first time, overnight, and give it a shot. My puppies, my dogs, I shouldn't call them puppies. They're all, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old. So they're not really puppies. I sort of wanted to see what their, how they would react to, you know, me getting on here and, and talking for a long period of time. They don't seem to mind. I think they're just sort of laying down and taking in my words of wisdom, I guess. Huh? Um, I was just seeing if there was any other things I wanted to talk about. Uh, um, uh, I think maybe we'll just call it. We'll just call it a night for right now. Um, what I want to try and do is, at least be on here 2, 3, 4 hours. Um, I'm going to try every night, so y'all can sort of get you know, used to me being, because there's some podcasts that I listen to during the day that I sort of look forward, to watching. Um, so it's sort of a good thing. There's one podcast. He's like on Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. And he's like on in the morning, like from 11 to 2. You know, so I sort of look forward to watching him on those days and everything. But I sort of noticed that's the thing with most podcasts and stuff. Like at this time of the night, you know, there's not really anybody that's live or anything. So I thought, well, hey, I'm a lot of the times I'm up all night. I said, well, what the hell? Why don't I get online and just chit chat about this? And I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to be able to text back and forth with everybody. I see your comments. I might have to wear my glasses or whatever to be able to see the text messages and stuff because my eyesight's not too good. So probably start out maybe with texting, maybe answer any questions that you might have or anything. I love a lot of different topics. Politics is one thing. I'm not afraid to tell you how I feel about this person and that person and everything. I love music. I love all sorts of music. I love, you know, all your classic rock stuff. You know the usual names and stuff. The Beatles, Carpenters, Bread, Bee Gees. You know, whatever. I like the '60s. I like the '70s. I love the '80s. Not so much. I started to not really listen to the radio so much, when we started coming into the late '90s and stuff, because I'm not really a big hip hop, person, and I don't know. I just sort of lost interest in music um, in the mid and late '90s, and I really just had never and didn't really listen, any more music except for the classic rock stuff, Moody Blues and that type of stuff. But I do have to admit, though, the last couple years, I do have a deep love and appreciation for one group that's out right now. And as a matter of fact, they're on top of the charts. They're in the middle of a world tour right now. And I have to admit, I really love and appreciate BTS. Um, I started. They're a very unique group because when they started, like in 2013, and before they even got on stage and everything, in South Korea, you know, they train their what they don't call them stars, or they call them idols. So they usually train for a year or two. And what's unique about BTS is that, while they were in training, before they even got on stage and everything, they would go online and do live YouTube, like diary type things, like what happened that day or how they were feeling. And it's very, some of them are like really emotional. Some of them were really, they were going through a real tough time. Some of them from time to time, and they posted, without editing, no editing or anything. They just posted these little personal, diaries. They'd practice for 8, 10, 12 hours, that day, and then they would go, into a room, go online and talk to their fans live. And I've that was and that's just so unique. So that I sort of developed, ooh, I don't know, this closeness to them because I saw where they started from and their personalities and everything, and I just fell in love with them. They've got the greatest personalities, and they're so close with each other. They're almost like brothers. They're not like members of a group. They're more like brothers. Because when they started out, their company was really small, and when they started out, all seven of them had to share like one bedroom. We had There were like three bunk beds, and there's like one sort of full size, or it wasn't full size, more like a twin size, bed on the side. They all shared the same room. So anyway, so they've gone through a lot over the years, and now they're on top of the charts and everything. So I love BTS now, but I love the old stuff, the old rock and roll, the old Carpenters, the old Bread. You know, I love the Philly sound. I love the Motown sound. Um, all that stuff is great. I mean, I love the Philly sound of Stylistics, and Howard Melvin and the Blue Notes, and the Stylistics and the Shy Lights, and the Delphonics, and of course all the Motown stuff and everything. I can't actually believe that Barry Gordy is he's still alive. I think he was like 96 last time I checked a couple months ago. But Barry Gordy, the founder of Motown, is still alive. And then that, that's well, actually, that's wonderful. Hopefully, he's still in good health. And if I don't really see him anymore, so I don't know exactly how good a health he's in. But at least he's made it to 96, so that's pretty good. But so, anything we want to talk about on here, I'm up for it. Politics, music. I'm not really a big religious type of person. I'm more spiritual. Um, I'm not really, you know, I guess I'm more of a agnostic. I don't say that there definitely is a God, but I don't say that there's definitely not a God because, you know, you just you just don't know. And if you say that there definitely is or there definitely isn't, then, I guess you could call that faith. But logically, if you look at it logically, nobody really knows for sure unless you've actually been to heaven and seen him and stuff. If you believe that there definitely is a God, then that's faith, and that's fine with me if that's what you believe in. That's fine. But if you definitely don't believe in it, I can understand that it does seem like a big fairy tale with a person in the sky and angels floating around. It sounds more like a fairy tale than anything that's realistic. But who am I to say that maybe there is? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Um, I'll say this though: I definitely hope there is. So let's put it that way. I definitely hope there is. I'm not going to say. Well, I definitely hope there isn't a God. Because that wouldn't be as good as I hope there is a God. So then once you die, then maybe there is a beautiful place up there waiting for you, and maybe I could see my parents again, and all my animals. I mean, that's the other thing too. I just love animals. I've had a lot of dogs, and it's been a tough past couple of years, the past 10 years, and stuff, because I've had quite a few dogs, die on me and stuff, and it's really hard. Um, I've got I got four huskies still with me. Um, so yeah, I'm a big animal lover.
I cannot watch the ASPCA commercials that they have on TV because it just breaks my heart too much to, you know, just see an animal in distress. I can tell you my skunk story if you want me to tell my skunk story before I leave. There was a skunk that was outside. My next door neighbor came over with his dog, and then I usually bring my dogs out at the same time. So he came over and he brought his dog over. And before I brought mine outside, he said, "Hey, there's a skunk out here. He doesn't seem to be doing in too good a shape." He'd got his head caught like in a plastic pop bottle or something. He was probably trying to maybe get some water out of it or something, and his head got stuck in the bottle. And the poor thing, I mean, I mean, so it was a skunk, but it's still an animal, still a living thing. And I was, well, how can I help? What can I do? So I thought, well, I had a hole digger um, outside. It's a big, it's like a shovel, but with like, the pointed ends where you can, dig a hole and stuff. And I thought, hmm, maybe if I could get close enough and get that around the pop bottle, maybe I could pull it off. But but I also thought that maybe I might need a little bit of help. So I found some oil. I was able to get close enough, to the skunk where I was able to sprinkle a little bit of oil on the outside around the neck, where his head went into the bottle. So so then I stood in front of him, I don't know, maybe 5 feet away, and I I I put the hole digger, I clamped it onto the pop bottle, and I started pulling. I started pulling, this way, and sure enough, I could swear the skunk started pulling the opposite direction, like he knew what I was trying to do. And after a few more seconds, sure enough, that pop bottle came off, came off of his head. I was able to save that, the skunk, and I was just, I was just so happy. I mean, I'm not a big fan of, you know, skunks, but an animal's an animal and stuff. And when I got that pop bottle off his head, I just felt so good that I was able to come up with an idea, that actually worked, and I saved an animal. And also, once I got the pop bottle off, I sort of, walked away toward the opening of the gate, you know, give him his space. And sure enough, he started walking, you know, the other direction, and um, went underneath the fence, and went upon his way. So that's my skunk story, and I feel so good about that I was able to, even though it was just a skunk, I was able to help an animal live. You know, so yeah, that was a good feeling. But anyway, yeah, why don't we let's wrap it up for the night? And I'm gonna try and see if I can do do this every night. I'm not sure, maybe about Saturday or Sunday, but maybe every night during the week. I'm gonna try and start maybe like so that we get used to it at a nice even time. I'm gonna try and start at midnight, 12 o'clock. I'm gonna try and make it a point to start at 12 o'clock every night, and then see how long I can go. If I can go a couple hours or 3 or 4. Um, any more than that might be sort of pressing the luck a little bit. I don't know if I got that much to talk about, even though you're probably sick with me talking so much about this and that and this. But uh, anyway, so why don't we try and make a point to be here um, tomorrow night at at midnight. So I hope everybody enjoyed hearing me talk. But like I said, I'm going to try and get the text thing going, and or even people, if they could make phone calls and stuff. I'm not sure about the phone calls thing because I have listened to one podcast that does take phone calls, and you never know what you're going to get with with these with phone calls. You get a lot of crank, silly people, calling. So I don't know if I'll get to that point with phone calls, but I'll at least try and get the text thing going. Some I can look and see what everybody's writing, and maybe answer questions or talk about whatever you want to talk about or anything. I do. Um, well, I am looking forward to it. I'm glad I got on here tonight and started things out. Um, and like I said, if you wanted to look at my Freddie Fartelheimer character, I think I got like 4 things posted on Up All Night with Jeffrey Sheridan. Um, if you wanted to go on YouTube and take a look at that, me being Freddie Fartelheimer and just sort of being silly, being your typical MAGA MAGA supporter. So, but anyway, y'all have a nice rest of the evening, and I plan on seeing you tomorrow night at midnight. Then, thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Bye bye.